Hello and welcome to the World on Wednesday presentation of the Fulbright U.S. Student Program, sponsored by the Center for Global Engagement at the College of Staten Island. My name is Michele Callahan and I'm the Fellowship and Scholarship Advisor at the College of Staten Island, and I also serve as the college's Fulbright Program Advisor. Due to the situation with the coronavirus, this presentation has been moved to this online format. If you are a student at the College of Staten Island who is seeking a CC or co-curricular CLUE credit, there will be a series of 5 questions at the end of this presentation for which you can submit your answers. If you have further questions after this presentation, you can contact me using my information, which can be found on the CSI homepage. You can easily search for our scholarship page on the CSI homepage and find all my contact information below. So what is the Fulbright U.S. Student Program? Well, it's a wonderful program that allows students to spend a full academic year abroad in a host country that they choose, and there are different types of grants reflecting different activities that the students can engage in while in the host country. Due to the coronavirus, study abroad programs have unfortunately also been affected. There is a temporary pause on the study abroad programs, which we hope to see change in the future. If you have concerns about whether any programs will be available in the future, the Fulbright website has updates posted on their homepage. They have a link to their Twitter account where they're continually posting updates. The Department of State website, which actually runs the Fulbright program, is consistently posting updates as well. Okay, so if, like I said, if there are any concerns, you can find these consistent updates on the Fulbright homepage, their Twitter account, and the Department of State website. So if you're thinking about applying for the Fulbright U.S. Student Program, what are your options? Well, you can find that right here on their homepage by clicking on Types of Awards. And we'll see here, these are 2 very popularly chosen options. One option is to conduct your own independent study project or research project. You can teach English in the host country. There are other options such as study in public health, visual storytelling, creative arts, writing, graduate degree enrollment. And there are even some very specific types of grants offered by certain host countries. A good example of that is Germany. If you are a journalism student, they have an option just for you. So you're interested in applying for the Fulbright program. How can you be eligible to apply? Well, if we go to their homepage and click on eligibility, so here are the eligibility requirements that all applicants must meet. And if you look at the second one there on the list, applicants must have a conferred bachelor's degree or equivalent before the start of the grant. Basically, that means that if you will be a senior as of the upcoming fall 2020 semester, you'll be eligible to apply when the competition opens next. You can be a senior in college. You have to at least be a senior in college. You may be a master's level student, a recent graduate. You may be working on dissertation research for your PhD. You just can't have completed the PhD yet. There is a separate competition called the Fulbright Scholar Program, which is for people who already hold a PhD or have significant experience in their career fields. I'd also like to point out another eligibility criterion. Applicants must have sufficient proficiency in the written and spoken language of the host country sufficient to communicate with the people and to carry out the proposed study research. Language in the Fulbright program is highly nuanced, and it varies very much from host country to host country. There are many countries where you do not have to have any proficiency in the host country's language, and then there are some that require fluency. For example, Mexico would require that you are fluent in Spanish. Generally, I see that languages that are taught commonly here in the U.S., many times you'll see that the host country might require at least a basic knowledge of that language. Now, even if you do not need a proficiency in the host country's language at all, you may still have to consider, is what you're doing something that would require you to have more proficiency in that language? For example, if your project involves interviewing people in the host country, you would have to consider whether you have the level of that language that would be needed to carry out a conversation with people there. Also, even if it is not required, it still looks good if you make at least a basic effort to acquire some of the host country's language. You will be competing against a lot of other students who have made efforts such as learning the language online, through social media, through apps for their phone. So it does look good if you invest a little time in at least acquiring a very basic level of that language. And it also shows that you have made a commitment to learning more about that host country. Now, there might also be countries where English is the official language or one of the official languages of that country, or it might be widely spoken throughout that country. But perhaps the region where you will be, perhaps the project that you're working on, there might be a local language spoken there that would be beneficial to know. So these are all things that need to be considered very much so when you create your application for the Fulbright program. So if you scroll down a little bit underneath the eligibility requirements, you'll see the preferred qualifications. And I'd like to point out an item on that list. Candidates who have not resided or studied in the country to which they are applying for more than 6 months, not counting undergraduate study abroad, are preferred. The mission of the Fulbright program is to promote cultural exchange between the U.S. and the host country. They tend to prefer candidates who have not spent a significant amount of time in that host country, simply to give them a chance to experience a country they have never seen before, or maybe only spent a summer there. So the preference is given to students who have not spent a great deal of time in that country. A common question I get asked is, I grew up in the host country, but I came to the U.S. when I was really young. Would that count against me in this competition? And the answer is no. You're not at any competitive disadvantage at all if that's the case. That really pertains more so to at least a young adult who has spent a significant amount of time living, studying in the host country. But that's not to say that if that's the case, you can't be selected. If you have a very good reason and you've made a very good case for why there would be great benefit to give you a grant to carry out your project in that host country, that would certainly be considered. Now you'll notice that GPA is not mentioned at all on this list in the eligibility criteria. Now that's not to say that your academic record is not considered at all. It certainly is. It's just not the be-all, end-all of this competition. A lot more weight is put on what you propose to do in the host country and the benefit that comes out of that. Is there something you could learn by going to the host country? that you can bring back here to your own community, the U.S., that would benefit the people here. And in return, while you're in the host country, you are expected to engage with the host country. Usually that comes in the form of volunteerism. If you're an English teaching assistant, you might start an after-school club for the students to continue helping them to learn English. And that further promotes Fulbright's mission of cultural exchange. So more weight is put on those qualities of your application. But like I said, it's not to say that your academic record is not looked at all. This is a competitive program, so I would suggest that you try to keep as strong of an average as you can. So if you're approaching your senior year, you might want to know more about the specifics of the competition timeline, which can be found right here on their website. Right now, if you click on it, you won't actually find any information. This could be because they're in the process of updating their website. But regarding the competition timeline, the deadline occurs every year in October. And when you submit your application, it is sent to the National Screening Committee here in the U.S., and over the next few months, they review your application. By late January, you're notified as to whether or not you've been selected as a semifinalist. And if so, your application is then sent to the host country where the final decision is made. Host countries usually notify whether you've been selected for a grant by about March or April. Some host countries can notify as late as May, even June, but that's pretty rare. And when they notify you, if you've been selected for a grant, you're then known as a finalist. If you then accept the Fulbright grant, you're then known as a Fulbrighter. And that's to be distinguished from a Fulbright scholar. As I mentioned previously, that's a separate competition for people who already hold a PhD or have significant experience in their career field. So if you're selected and you accept your grant, you will most likely expect to start the grant period in late summer, possibly early fall. That can vary among the host countries also. And if you're a senior, that would give you enough time to finish your bachelor's, typically by the end of May or June, and then you can start your grant period by late summer, early fall. The Fulbright U.S. student program offers travel to over 140 different countries around the world. A lot of thought should be put into the particular host country that you choose for your application. You would want to consider things such as, is there a particular country or region of the world where you can learn something beneficial to your overall goals, or perhaps enhance your language skills? You also want to consider, can your proposal be carried out in many different countries around the world? Or are you making a very good case about why you need to go to a specific country? For example, let's say your career plans involve becoming a foreign service officer. Certainly, any country will give you valuable global experience, but why would you need to, let's say, go to Turkey as opposed to France, as opposed to Indonesia? So the more specific of a case you can make for the host country you choose, the stronger your application becomes. Regarding things you may consider when you're creating your proposal, if you're applying for the independent study research option, you may want to consider organizations in certain countries that have a focus on something that you're focusing on for your overall career goals. They may have the data that you need to further your study in that field. You may want to consider universities in other countries. They may have a master's level program that fits perfectly with what you're studying about that region of the world or that particular country. If you're applying for the English teaching assistant option, you may want to consider how that relates to your overall career plans. Certainly someone that's planning to go into teaching can make a natural connection between wanting to apply for the English teaching assistant option and their career plans. And there is a slight preference given to those types of candidates, but you need not be going into teaching to apply for the English teaching assistant option. There are many benefits to that. Let's say, for example, you're a pre-med student. You have an ambition to take a lead role in the hospital you're working at and lead a team of other doctors. Teaching experience, no doubt, would be helpful. Let's say also, as that pre-med student, the community in which you're planning to work in the future, there are many speakers of a language spoken in a particular country, and it would be a benefit to serve those patients if you learn that language with more proficiency directly from native speakers. So there are many different cases you can build as to why you have chosen that particular country. You also very much want to read the host country summary for the country or countries that you're thinking about applying to. So the host country summary gives you a great deal of information about the type of candidate sought for that particular host country. We'll use Spain as our first example, and you can get to it either by clicking on the particular country, or you can go to the particular region of the world it's in, click on that, and then you can scroll down a bit and see the list of countries that are in that region. And when we click on Spain and we get to their host country summary page, you can see the different types of grants offered. And for this competition that's just about concluding for this year, we see that they offer 24 grants for the independent study research option. And if you click on that, or actually any of the grant options offered, you see information about the level candidate that you can be, the grant period, a lot of other information. You can see here that for Spain, they accept all degree levels, including bachelor's, master's, and the doctoral level. For a bachelor's level candidate, keep in mind you would have to at least be a senior. The duration of the grant is given, whether there's a orientation you would have to attend prior to departing for your host country. There is information about when the grant starts. The candidate profile is very important to read. Here they will give you information about preference of certain candidates. For example, for the independent research option for Spain, you can see here it says advanced graduate students, doctoral students, and those with previous research experience will be given priority. Different host countries could have different reasons why they may prefer one level candidate over another. Now, you can be an undergraduate student who is about to earn your bachelor's, but the preference will be given to master's and doctoral level candidates. So if you're an undergraduate student, to be competitive in this particular competition for this country with this particular grant, you would have to consider how can you make your proposal very strong in order to compete with the preferred candidate. So it doesn't mean you can't be chosen. It just means that there might be a preference that that host country has for one reason or another. You'll also see the foreign language proficiency requirements. For Spain, you must have an intermediate level of Spanish. You will also see whether it's possible to enroll in a graduate degree program. Some countries allow you to earn your master's while you're there, if you make a good case about how that degree program aligns with your overall goals. And even if you see that there is no option for you to actually enroll in a graduate degree program, that doesn't mean you can't necessarily take a few classes at a university nearby. Maybe a particular class or so has something to do with your proposal, or it allows you to learn the language better. There's also the affiliation, which is needed when you're proposing to do independent research in the host country. And that's the location and the organization that you choose to work with that can help you with what you propose to do. In your application, actually, you supply a letter from the organization with which you're affiliating, which will state that they have the resources that you need and that they will allow you to use them, and in some cases even assist you with it. So there's the affiliation, which students must find depending on the type of project they're going to be conducting in the host country. Sometimes they may even give suggestions for resources you can use to help find an affiliation. If there are any special ineligibility requirements listed, you'll see that there as well. Sometimes you might find that if you have dual citizenship with the U.S. and the host country, you might not be eligible to apply to that particular host country. One reason could be is that if you're in that host country and they go to war, if you're also a citizen of that country, it's possible you might be drafted into that war, which you certainly don't want happening on your grant period. Okay, so any other information that's pertinent to what you need to know for that host country. In some cases, if you have dependents that you would like to take along with you, you will be in the host country for a full academic year. Some host countries offer extra grant money to help support the dependents you bring with you. Some countries don't have that option. So these are all the things that are very important to read when you're considering which country you'd like to do your Fulbright grant in. Another example, if you look at the host country summary for Egypt, here we see that they do not actually offer an option for the English teaching assistantship. Sometimes that's the case. If you click on the summary for their independent research option, you'll actually see here that they're only accepting master's and doctoral level candidates. So if you're a senior in college as an undergraduate, you would not be able to particularly apply to Egypt as a host country until you're more advanced in your education. And like I said, there could be many reasons why different host countries set those conditions the way they do. Back to Spain, if we look at the summary for the English teaching assistantship, they're actually offering for this competition that's concluding 190 grants. That's a pretty large amount of grants. And if you click on that, we will see again what type of candidate they're looking for this particular grant. And for the English teaching assistantship, this is a case where you don't actually pick a location that you'd like to go within that country. You're placed where the need is. It's usually outside of the major cities of that country, usually in places where they need it most. And when you go to the host country, sometimes where you're placed, they could make that choice depending on the application you submit and the particular experience you bring out. Sometimes you might have experience that's better suited for one type of region over another type. You might be more suited for teaching elementary school age children as opposed to high school age children. In some host countries, you do get to indicate the region that you'd like to teach in, not like a specific city or town, but sometimes you can indicate a preference for a region of that country. And again, they'll tell you if there's any foreign language proficiency required. They tell you the type of placement type that they need. Here it's pretty open. They're looking for pretty much all levels. And they'll also tell you a lot of other things you'll find on the other summaries for the other types of options. Now you also see here, some students find this helpful at the top of their page here. If you click on statistics, you can see how many students are applying for grants in a particular host country. Now, some host countries, as you can imagine, are very popularly chosen, such as England, Italy, France. And so, as you can imagine, there's a lot more competition for that country. When you apply for the Fulbright U.S. student program, you're selecting only one host country, and you're only competing against other students who also applied not only to that country, but to the particular grant option you've chosen. So, for example, if you've chosen to apply to Spain as an English teaching assistant, you're only competing against other students who submitted an application for the ETA to Spain. So, for example, if we, again using our example of Spain, if we want to see, well, how competitive is it to apply to that particular country? I'll find it right there on the menu. And let's say we want to know how many students applied for particularly the ETA. And then down there on the screen, if we click on Spain, we'll get to see those numbers. So you can see the past competitions, and as you can see, quite a lot of students apply. So that's one of the more competitive countries. Okay, as another example, let's click on Kosovo. And we'll see here that there are a lot less applicants to this country, also a lot less grants offered, and some students might think that it gives them an advantage to choose a host country such as that because they see that there aren't many applications submitted for that particular country. I would advise not relying on that though, and choosing the country that you can truly make a good case for. You might have chosen a country where a lot of students apply there, but you might have a really good reason. You might have studied the history, the language of that country for many years. You truly have a good reason, enthusiasm for going there. So I wouldn't just pick another country that doesn't have as many applicants just because it seems like there may be an advantage to doing that. Even though you see there's not many applicants applying to this particular country, I bet those particular students are making a very good connection between going to Kosovo to teach English and their overall career plans. So if you're thinking about applying for the Fulbright U.S. student program, how can you become a stronger candidate? Well, one thing is to build a really good knowledge of the host country, their history, their social customs, culture, political climate, environment. This will no doubt help inform your work in the host country. You would become acquainted maybe with something unique in a country that's relevant to your overall plans. A business practice there if you're a business major. Perhaps there is a really good treatment for a disease that you're performing medical research on. The options are endless, really. But showing that you know the social customs of that host country is important. You want to make sure that what you're proposing in your essays doesn't cause any sensitivities. This especially becomes important. Sometimes students, in their efforts to address an issue here in their own community, they may find a host country that has a similar issue, and you want to be conscious about the way you write about it, though. You want to present your essay more so as wanting to learn about the initiatives that host country has undertaken to better help you propose solutions for that same issue here. Other things you can do to become a stronger candidate: obtain training in your field. This is especially important, let's say, if you're applying for the English teaching assistant option. It looks good if you have tutoring experience, if you've served as a summer camp counselor, if you're applying for the independent research option. Building good, strong research experience in your background is very helpful. Also, on that note, if you're planning to interview people in the host country, here's where you want to be careful, because it could cause questions such as, what are you planning to do with that data? Where is it going to be published? Do you have the permission of the people that you're interviewing to publish that data? It's not to say that you can't conduct interviews in the host country, but one thing I suggest about that is to show that the questions you're asking, for one, will not cause any sensitivities. You know about the social customs well enough of that host country where you know you're not posing those sensitivities. You would also preferably want to get some training in conducting interviews and collecting data, proper methods of doing so, making sure that when you conduct data, collect data, it's done in an ethical manner. So if you're planning to interview people in the host country, that really helps your application a lot. It's also suggested that you get involved in your campus clubs, community activities, volunteerism. When you write your proposal, It is expected that you also include how you plan to engage in the host country. So if you've been naturally joining campus clubs and participating with your fellow students, it is a good sign that you would continue to do so in the host country. You can work on building proficiency in the language of the host country, no doubt very helpful. Establishing relationships with faculty, your professors. This becomes very important when you ask for the recommendations for your application. So, if you're a CSI student and you are looking to earn a CC or co-curricular clue credit, you may submit your answers to these 5 questions to Winnie Brophy in the Center for Global Engagement.